Hello everyone, I'm just making this video for you for interest purposes. This is a race we may end up having a bet in on Wednesday. It's at York on Wednesday the 16th of May. It's the Dante meeting, of course, culminating in the Dante Stakes, a trial for the Derby. But this is a very interesting race, and it's a type of race that I love trying to work out. It's a 6 furlong Class 2 handicap for 4-year-olds and up. It's only worth 80 grand to the winner. Makes it a little tricky for punting purposes because, as I always say, when the prize money is not high and you have horses of this calibre that are capable of running in and competing in races worth 60 to £100,000, blowing your mark by winning a race worth only 18 grand may not be the trainer's priority. So this kind of race is far more difficult to bet in from the being certain you're on a trier angle than, for instance, the Victoria Cup. On Saturday, there was no doubt in my mind, 100%, that Ripoff was a 100% trier, trying for his life. Why wouldn't you? It's a big pot. You've got no weight, you've got a perfect setup, you're going to be trying. Which means you can have your money on without fear that, you know, you're going to end up on a drifter that is not off, alright? Anyway, but the horses in this race are very interesting because it highlights the continuing conundrum of trying to solve these complicated handicaps, because you get different types of horses in different stages of their careers. And let's just have a look at a few of the horses that are in here. We'll bring this one back in. This is actually the short list, what I consider the contenders, right? I've handicapped the race. But what I'm talking about is the different types of horses you've got. If we take a look at a horse like Golden Apollo, he's a very, very nice horse. This horse was campaigned nicely as a 3-year-old. He's going to be making his seasonal reappearance as a 4-year-old. Of course, when he was a 3-year-old, if he ran against the older horses, he got weight for age. But he doesn't get that anymore. Now he's a 4-year-old. And let's have a look. What did he win? He started out his 3-year-old career off a mark of 81 at York in May of last year, and by the end of the season, let's have a look, he ended up rated 99. He's going to be running off 98. He managed to win at Ascot race worth 22 grand off 95. So that was a decent run. He won at York again in an 18-runner race of 86. And I've checked out his run style. He's a deep hold-up horse. He's held up at the back and comes with a storming run in the final furlong. So he's always going to need luck in running. But with that kind of run style, he's going to be the kind of horse that is going to be very difficult for the handicapper to assess. Because, like Ripoff, who got up on the shadow of the post, how much can the handicapper realistically put up Ripoff for winning by a neck? You can't give him £7, can he? What justification have you got? There was 3 or 4 of them within half a length of each other. So these kind of horses can often hide, these deep closers can actually quite often hide their true ability. So Golden Apollo is a typical 4-year-old who may well continue to improve now, even though he's lost his weight for age. I'll show you what I mean by continue to improve. If we look at this horse here, Flying Pursuit, he's 5. Let's have a look at his 4-year-old career. And you could compare his 4-year-old career with, you can imagine what sort of 4-year-old career Golden Apollo might have if he goes the right way. Let's just have a look at Flying Pursuit. I hope this is of interest to you, because you're always going to get this. You're going to get The 4-year-old who's coming out of his 3-year-old season, who's yet to do his full physical maturity, so he may still be well treated. You've got the 5-year-old, like Flying Pursuit, and let's have a look at him. He's a very nice horse. We bet him a couple of times last year when he won. And here he is in April 2017. This was his first run as a 4-year-old, and he ran off 90. And then they tried him a few more times, and he actually won on his 5th start, and he dropped to a mark of 84. So he had to drop £6 before he could win. But in that win, they learnt something about him. I remember they learned that he likes to front run. And lo and behold, he managed to win. He won off 84. He then won off 90, which is the mark that he ran off previously. And he was in the van all the way. He then goes to Ripon and made all and won very nicely on soft ground. He may want soft ground. I'm not certain about that. But his family generally do like the soft. He has got decent form on better ground. But he managed to win off 96 in a decent race. 14 runners. Let's have a look at the result. And we were on him this day. I don't know if you remember. And he made all. And he beat Golden Apollo, funny enough. There he is. So that was a decent race. So he started off 90. And by the end of the season, he was running off. He managed to finish 2nd at Doncaster in October off 101. So he went from being 19th of 22 off 90 to being 2nd of 22 over the same course and distance by the end of the season off 101. And that is how a 4-year-old, so he was a 4-year-old all this year. So that's what I'm saying. He started off on 90, he's ended up on 102 or 101 and still being competitive. And you'll find this, and this is the conundrum we had at Ascot on Saturday with Ripoff. We had a couple of older horses who both ran very well in Firmament and Burnt Sugar. As it turns out, they were on the wrong side, which compromised their chance. But the balance was between those older horses who'd already climbed the handicap and the 4-year-olds who still haven't finished improving. Now, Flying Pursuit has climbed to 101. I don't think he's finished with. Now he's 5. He could do very much like what Zhui Feng did. Zhui Feng ran 2nd on Saturday. He was held back and made sure he was well handicapped as a 4-year-old, and he won the Royal Hunt Cup off 100. He's now 5, but yet he very nearly won the Victoria Cup off 106. Now he's likely this year, he's probably going to get £2 or £3 for that. He's going to go up to 108, 109. But I've got no doubt that back at a mile, Zhui Feng is going to be competitive in listed and group races over a mile on fast ground. He may find it very hard now to win a handicap like the Hunt Cup because he's going to bump into something that's got the 10 or 12 pound in hand that he had last year when he was winning it himself as a 4-year-old. But Flying Pursuit is not finished with as a handicapper. I'm absolutely certain of that. When he gets his conditions, and he may want soft or good to soft, but he has run perfectly well on good to firm. So he's an interesting horse. So he's a classic 5-year-old. He's a still improving 5-year-old. He didn't run particularly well on his first run of the season, but it took him 4 runs to get ready to win last year, and then he continued to improve. So he may need a few runs to get better. So he's a classic type of 5-year-old, progressed well as a 4-year-old, may not be finished with. So Golden Apollo, if we go back to him for a second, he's a 4-year-old. He ran very well as a 3-year-old. He's won over this course and distance. I've got no doubt this horse could still have the 10 and 12 pounds of improvement in him that Flying Pursuit had, if they can unlock him. So what route they're going to go, it'll be very interesting to see. I've got another issue with this race at York, which we'll discuss shortly, which is the draw. because there's always a track bias at York to one side or the other. It's never even. But this win here at York in this 62 grand handicap, he was way out the back and he comes storming with a strong run. And we're going to talk about another horse that was in this race very shortly, because this is another classic one that you sometimes get. Another type. So he was towards the rear, ran on strongly, led near the finish. Okay, so that was off 86. He's now up. So after winning that race on 86 there in June last year, he's now up to 98. So he's up 12 pounds. But he was still able to win at Ascot off 95. So he's one type, a continually progressive 3-year-old. Here's another type of 4-year-old, and these do occur there. If you look around, you'll find these type. This horse here, Private Matter. He was owned by Cheveley Park Stud. They got rid of him. He's an interesting horse because he's by the sire Mason. Mason was a ground-dependent horse, a 6-furlong sprinter who won Group 1 sprints, but only on heavy and very, very soft ground. And Private Matter may be one of those horses that also really wants the very soft ground. And we'll have a look why in a second. But let's have a look at his RPRs. Have a look at this. Let's go back to date. And I'll explain what I mean. Okay, so let's have a look at his 2-year-old career. Because his 2-year-old career, this horse here, Private Matter, was owned by Cheveley Park, was bred by Cheveley Park. Richard Fahey Ebor Racing Club have bought it now. He started off as a 2-year-old, won his maiden on soft ground at Nottingham. Then goes on firm ground and gets beaten. He ran in a listed race at Ripon on good to soft and came second in a listed race. Then took him to another listed race at Ayr where he came second to last. And then they took him to Maison de Feet and it was very soft ground. And he won a listed race. And that was the end of his 2-year-old career. He was gelded in the winter and he appeared as a 3-year-old at Newmarket in the European Free Handicap. And he started life on fast ground over 7 furlongs as a 3-year-old off a mark of 106. And whether the fast ground or whatever affected him, I don't know. But he was then tried that's a listed handicap. So he ran in a handicap off 106. Was well beaten. But it was still, to run off 106 in a handicap is some feat. He then goes to Newbury for a listed race over 6 furlongs and finished last on soft ground and ran very badly. It was a month after running at Newmarket on firm ground or fast ground, and it clearly was not right. He then ran in a very hot handicap at York, this race, which was won by Golden Apollo. But look at this. Golden Apollo wins the race carrying 8 stone 3. And Private Matter was asked to carry 9 stone 7 in that race. So he was giving £18 to Golden Apollo. But we know Golden Apollo went up £12 for that. Okay, so that's interesting. So he ran in that race there, and he was 10th of 18 off 104. They then take him to the July meeting at Newmarket. He runs off 100, finishes down midfield, 11th of 19. And then send him back to Newmarket again a couple of weeks later. He runs off 96, and he's still down the field. He goes to Ascot, and he runs in this race, won by Golden Apollo. This is the Shergar Cup. And this time Private Matter carries 9 stone 10. And he's getting £1 from Golden Apollo. He can't get any closer despite being £18 better off. And then he goes to York and finishes last on his final start as a 3-year-old. He's had a very hard 3-year-old season. He's been overrated based on winning this probably very weak race in France. He started life as a 3-year-old. He's been gelded. Gelding operation has not really helped. And he's dropped from 106 at the start of his 3-year-old career. He's now rated 86. He's dropped 20 pound in a year. He has already had 2 runs at Doncaster this year. He was down the field on soft ground on his first start back, dropped a couple of pounds after that in March, and he just ran the other day on the 5th of May at Doncaster and ran his best race for a very, very long time. He came third, a close-up third at that as well. And he was beaten 2 necks. There you go. So we have Private Matter back there at York as a 3-year-old. He was giving £18 to Golden Apollo and was beaten 4 lengths or something like that. Now, in this race on Wednesday, Golden Apollo has got to give Private Matter £12. So Private Matter is now, that is how much the weights have swung based on their performances on the track. There is a £30 pull between the two. Private Matter, is he now going to climb back up the handicap? He's been rated 100. He's been rated as high as 100 and there you go, his highest rating 106. He ran in a handicap of 106. Very interesting. Whether he can ever reproduce that kind of form on faster ground is debatable, but he's an interesting type. So we've got different types here. We've got 2 4-year-olds and a 5-year-old with all different profiles. Private Matter was a highly rated 2-year-old who had a very tough 3-year-old season and dropped down the handicap as a result of being rated too highly, and arrives at the start of his 4-year-old career off a much lower mark. We've got Golden Apollo, who was a highly progressive 3-year-old and climbed the handicap. The question is, can he continue that form as he trained on from 3 to 4, and can he push on again and is now rated 98? Can he now go on and become a 110, 112 horse? He's going to need to be able to win these kind of races of that kind of mark. And it's his first time out, so it'll be interesting to see how he runs. He may need it. Then we've got Flying Pursuit. He's the type who climbed steadily as a 4-year-old, is now a 5-year-old. He's a bit like Zui Feng, won some nice races. He's not done with. I clearly would say this horse this year can continue to develop and strengthen, and when he gets his conditions, I should think he's capable of being a Group 2 horse, I would think. Then you got the older horses, like Danzino. This is the other group of horses, which is like Firmament and Burnt Sugar, who are exposed. They've had a lot of runs, over 30 runs in their life or whatever they've had. And Danzino's a 7-year-old. He's been a group race winner in the past, but he's now on the downgrade part of his career. He's down rated 102, and he has been rated as high as 115. And let's have a look, find him in a handicap. Here you go, he ran in a Goodwood handicap off 110 and finished 7th. That was in the Stewards Cup, and he's dropped £8 since then. If he could reproduce any of that kind of form, where he's won group races, he's won an Ascot handicap there off 104. He's won the group race there on turf. You know, he would be a contender, but the handicap snip methodology takes into account that these horses are on the downgrade and that they're not likely to run to that form again. But that's the other. So in these kind of handicaps of all types, you've got the 4-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, and what I call the 6-year-olds and up. And the question mark is, which one of those categories is going to come out on top? And if you can work that out, you also got to work out the angle of pace and going, and is there a track bias? All of that has to be taken into account. But that is how I look at the races. I look for the types, what handicap marks they're on now, what handicap mark I think they could achieve if they ran to their best, and will the race that they're running in provide them with the opportunity to run to that mark. And the big question is the trainer going there thinking today's the day we're going to win this race? If you can't answer that question, then it makes it very difficult to have a bet. Anyway, I just thought I'd make that little video for you, and I hope that's of some interest, stimulate some thought when you're looking at races, looking at horses. Look at the type, look at their career path. Are they at the peak or at their projected scope of ability, or is there still more to come? Or have they had their best days and they're now on the downside and their best days are behind them? There you go. I hope that's of some interest. I'll speak to you all soon when I've decided on whether we're having a bet or not.